some more practical hints and just general bits of advice about if you're concerned about this and you want to be a bit more private when you're online. What are the things that you can do? What are the things you might be aware of? Following on from Kane's talk, I think it's very. I think it's safe to assume that nothing you do online really is ever entirely private, and so I think you should always enter in that kind of doing whatever you're doing with that in mind. When you sign up for a free Gmail account or a free email account or whatever, you are giving them information about yourself. They, in return, provide you with services, useful services. Maybe not Google+, but Gmail, Google Calendar, useful, good services that you get a significant benefit from. But the trade-off for that is, and you shouldn't be under any illusion, and I'm not here to bash Google, this is the same with most companies, as Kane was saying, Facebook, LinkedIn, anything where you sign up that's a free sign-up, you are paying for that service, but not necessarily financially. You're paying for it with information about you. Companies like Google and Facebook make their money by selling information about you. You are their product. You get to use Facebook and you get to see the grandkids and kids and various bits and bobs in XYZ and see different stories are interesting. But the payment for that is that you have signed up with your information that is then a marketable information allowing companies to target ads at you which they're willing to pay for. Information about you is particularly valuable to advertisers. If you've got a particular product and it sells to people that like A, B, C but not D, that information is vastly superior to just a general TV advert that hits everybody at once. It's a massive waste of money, TV adverts, in comparison, unless they're in between certain programmes. It's why if you're ever watching football on ITV with the commentary turned off because it's just so bad. But you watch it and at half time it's all beer adverts. They know their audience. You're not going to see any My Little Pony adverts in between the 2 rounds of a football match. So it kind of already exists, but online I think it exists more. I think we should be very cautious of that. So I'm just going to talk about some little things that you might not be aware of online and some hints about staying private if you want to stay private. And there's a few little things you can do. I was going to show this video because I was worried about Kane, but there are lots of good little videos and stuff.
What are you worried about me?
You're just late. There are lots of little videos, but I'm not going to show this. So most of us, I imagine, would use Safari as our main browser, and there are a few little things you can do to ensure that you're a little bit more private online. Now, when you click on the Safari thing on the side, you see this kind of private browsing, and you think to yourself, ha-ha, that means I can be private online. Well, that's not really what it means. Private browsing does not mean perhaps what you think it means. Private browsing basically means it doesn't allow a website to put a cookie on the machine, so to keep track of where you've been. It doesn't keep any records of what you're doing in history. So if you're buying, your significant other a nice present, it's worth turning on private browsing, going to the website, buying it, and then turning it back off again. And there'll be no way for him or her to know that you've been to website ABC to buy XYZ or do whatever. But it doesn't really keep you private online in the way that you might think it keeps you private online. It really just means it doesn't record where you've been. So there are some things that you can do in Safari. So in Preferences, there's a whole privacy tab. Here it is. And Safari's good at this. Chrome has this feature, and Firefox has this feature where you can look at the privacy settings. And if you look under that, you can it's incredible, really. Whoa! That was a massive jump. I have 3,359 websites have stored cookies on my computer. Little bits of information about what I did last time I visited that page, or little information about me. Now, most of the time, it's because I've said that they can do that, and those are actually quite useful some of the time. They know what you're looking for, or they know it's you, and A, B, and C. But you don't have to do any of those. You can block all cookies and never accept any cookies at all from any website. I block cookies and website data from third parties and advertisers. So I'm kind of the middle ground. You've got those 3 options. You can block everything, you can block nothing, or you can block it from kind of third party and advertisers. And it's entirely up to you. I don't know what the default setting is. Do you know what the default setting is? Third party. So the default setting is this. Most websites now, or some websites now, will ask for a location service, so they know where you are. And they're actually quite good. If you load Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever when you're at home, this has not got a GPS in. It knows where you are from your IP address. It knows where you are from where you're connecting to the internet. So it gives you a reasonable position of where you are. And again, you can deny that, you can turn that off, or you can get it, as I've got it here, for it to for it to pop up a little prompt saying, do you want this website to access your location? You can say no. And there are disadvantages of saying no. So one thing about Google Maps, if I launch Google Maps now, I launched it earlier on, it will show me in Exeter, and if I type coffee shops, it will show me coffee shops in Exeter. If I didn't have that on, and it used to be the case, you turn Google Maps on, and it will show you a picture of the world, or a picture of the UK, and you'd have to filter it down. So there are advantages and disadvantages. Again, it's trade-offs. It's what you're willing to reveal about your position. And we can talk about how you can really tighten this and clamp this down in a minute. Ask websites not to track me. Websites will track you. If that isn't ticked, well, I think it is ticked.
It's voluntary code.
It's voluntary, and Google got into trouble for bypassing it, didn't they, in the States? I can't remember what the outcome of that was. But basically, if you visit one website with a Google banner in, or a Facebook banner, or whatever, and again, not knocking on those two companies, they both provide great services for free, they will then track where you go from the websites after that. So even if you leave them and go to website A, then B, then C, they will keep a record of that because it's information they can build up about you, and they know that you like Exeter Chiefs and coffee. And next time you go to Facebook, lo and behold, there'll be a rugby advert and an advert for a coffee shop in Exeter. Now, you could argue that that's useful. But this tick box here, if it's not ticked, I mean, you don't have to do it. And importantly, you know, it's an ask websites not to track me. You can say don't track me, and they say I'm going to track you. There's nothing you can do about it. But there's Apple will say in their code, when you go to that web page, don't track me, and you would hope that most reputable websites wouldn't track you.
It's
the reason Google was an exception, because you would expect dodgy websites to ignore that. You would expect major multinational companies to follow that, particularly open companies.
It's the way that certain website owners get paid for having adverts on their sites. Mm-hmm. That's the at the end of each month they will get a small balance transfer of a few pence.
Mm-hmm. And it all adds up. If you're a website with lots and lots and lots of hits, millions of hits, a few millions of pence, yeah, I'll take that. 10,000 pence, is right. So there is this privacy tab, and if you haven't, if you want to have a look at this, you can, and you can go into details and see which websites have record data, and you can remove all of that. And you can remove all of that, but lots of that is useful. So when I go to the weather page of the BBC, it knows I'm in, and going through the phone as you would expect because of the internet, it knows that I'm in Exeter. That's useful, because I don't want to type in Exeter every time. It gives me the weather for Exeter, because it knows I'm in Exeter, because I've said, when I've gone to this webpage, it's asked me, do you want me to leave a cookie on your system? And I've said yes. And then I've said, oh, my location is Exeter. And so it knows I'm in Exeter. This isn't doing a location thing, this is because it saves some information. And it's that balance. It's the BBC. Do we trust the BBC? Or there you go. It's a judgment call for you, and I'm certainly not going to dictate. But there are a few other things that you might want to consider. Searching is interesting. Searching on the internet is interesting. There's a search engine called DuckDuckGo. And DuckDuckGo looks like this, and the whole point of DuckDuckGo is it kind of allows you to search anonymously. It's very kind of secure. It won't track you. It won't keep a record of your searches. It doesn't do any of those things that Google and Yahoo and Bing do. That means in some ways it's not as good a search engine. If I type coffee Exeter into DuckDuckGo, I will probably get coffee shops in Exeter in New Hampshire. Because Exeter in New Hampshire is bigger than Exeter in the UK, and it's just using its algorithm to think, oh, that's higher towards the top. So it's it has advantages and disadvantages, but as a search engine, it's actually pretty good. I like it, and in fact, I use it not from a privacy point of view, but I kind of use it as my default search engine because it does some useful things. So if I want to type in the Matrix, I can put little bangs on the end, a little exclamation mark, and then say, oh, actually, can you take me to the Matrix on IMDb? And it will search for the Matrix on IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, and it will launch the page for the Matrix on IMDb, which is quite nice. I can say I want to learn about Exeter in Wikipedia. And so I put exclamation mark bang and exclamation mark W, and it knows I'm in Wikipedia, and now I've searched for Exeter in Wikipedia. And obviously this is much quicker when it's not going through the phone, and it works really well. And you can do that for lots of different websites. You can search for products on Amazon. So I want some hair gel I want some hair gel from Amazon. And yes, it'll take you to the Amazon page with hair gel.
You'll be really pleased when it all falls out.
Yeah. £2.9p bargain. Just think of what I could do. I could make it look like that baddie in the. So that's a really nice search engine. I think that's got some really, really nice features. I would recommend DuckDuckGo if you're worried about Google. Now it's not as good as Google as a search engine. It's slightly, well, not slightly slower. It is a little bit slower. Its results are perhaps not as tailored to you as Google. Google make their money, or primarily made their money, from producing a fantastic product. Their search engine is excellent. But you can search Google, and the thing is, from searching from Google, it will anonymise you. You can see the little HTTPS padlock in the corner. Now, assuming that's valid, which we talked about earlier on, but yeah, exactly, which we kind of think it is. You can get it to search for Google, so you can search for Exeter and put !G, and I want you to search in Exeter in Google, but this actually entirely anonymises that process. So you've got Exeter and things that come up for Exeter, and again, same thing for Google Images. If I want to find pictures of space, I can put the little bang on the end, space, Google Images, and it will search for Google Images of space.
Being a cynic, I ask myself, how did DuckDuckGo make any money?
Yeah, so that's interesting. At the moment, they don't. And they're entirely VC funded, venture capitalist funded. They do not make any money at all.
And they're renowned for losing money, venture capitalists.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to want to make some money. So but what's interesting, from a monetisation point of view, it's kind of like WhatsApp. Dare I mention it? If you go to WhatsApp website, it says, Facebook just bought them for 19 billion. I just can't even imagine. But anyway, Facebook just bought them for 19 billion, and it says you're never going to have any ads. We're never going to have any ads. We're hot on privacy. There's various bits and bobs we do to keep your privacy as a number one concern. And how we make our money is we charge you. And so if DuckDuckGo were to start to say, we're going to charge you £1 a year to use our services, would you pay for that? I don't know. Maybe. You might then go somewhere else and find another service.
I think they make their money from aggregate data.
They make the money as well, did they? From
I think, not anonymised aggregate.
It's not funded by the government by any chance, is it?
Well, we don't know because it's anonymised. But yeah, I mean, have a look at DuckDuckGo. You can set it as your homepage. You can add a little Safari extension. You can read about them in terms of what it means. And yeah, it's an interesting alternative, but it's not as snappy as Google, and often it just doesn't look as good as Google. And the results you get are not necessarily as good as what you would get from Google. So it's a trade-off, like we were saying earlier on. And not just hitting up on Google. I don't know if anybody uses Bing or Yahoo search. They're all the same. They're all the same. They all make their money as you as the product. Something else you can use. I've got a little Safari extension plugin up here. This is actually from John, called Ghostery. And you can just download it from the website. If you go into preferences, you can see the extensions that I've got installed, and Ghostery is a particularly good extension. What Ghostery does is it turns off all these tracking things on websites. It force turns them off because it doesn't load them. So what you do with Ghostery, if I go to a good website, a tech website, you'll see this little ghost has a little red button next to it which tells us, come on, how many things on that website we're trying to find information about me as a browser. 7 different things, 12 different things, and Ghostery's blocked them all. It just hasn't loaded them. It hasn't loaded the adverts. It hasn't, which is quite nice. It hasn't loaded, and you can click on it and see, it hasn't loaded Chartbeat, Datatran, DoubleClick, Facebook Connect, I don't know what all these things are. It's loaded Moat. Why is it loaded Moat?
The newest version of Ghostery, you do need to check the preferences because sometimes newly added services are enabled.
Yeah, that's interesting. So anyway, so you can go through and turn them off. So I've just turned, so this website doesn't know, pretty much doesn't know anything about me. It doesn't allow me to, any of those things, advertising or tracking or beacons or widgets, are not enabled. If you go to the BBC, you might think, I don't want anything to find out about any websites. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do. So with the BBC website, I've added the BBC website to my whitelist, which means I allow the BBC to know anything about my browsing habits. So with the BBC, it's greyed out because I've said actually you can record information about me in terms of cookies and everything else. So if you go to a website often that doesn't function the way you might expect it to do, and I can't remember what it was with the BBC. The BBC didn't do something properly when Ghostery was loading.
Quite often, if you go to a website that's got things like interaction, so things like comments, things like that,
Yeah.
Quite often comments they are plugins now that are third party, and Ghostery might block them, like Discuss.
Yeah. So I'm about to show another example. So Loop Insight's an Apple website, a kind of a blogging website, and oh no, not on that. And if you go to an article, you can often comment on the article and everything else. At the moment with Ghostery, you can't. But what it does is it blocks it in a really nice way. And I should have tried to find an example of this. If it's a movie, it won't necessarily load the movie or an advert, but it will give you a little box that's got the picture of a ghost in, and there's 3 different ghosts. There's the blocked ghost, there's a play once ghost, so if you want to watch this thing once, you can just click play once, and it will temporarily unblock it, let you see what that is, and then reblock it next time. Or you can unblock it every time, and I'm afraid I can't think of an example to show you of a particular...
Virgin does all.
What's that, sorry?
The Virgin already does have that.
Yeah, I can't. Let's go back and let's have a quick look to see if I can find an example of a Ghostery video to show you. But anyway, it blocks it. It doesn't load it by default, and so that's quite nice because it allows you to have a little bit more control over your privacy, your information that's being shared online, and it's free. How do Ghostery make their money? I suspect that's probably the next question. And yeah, I don't know. The Ghostery is very simple code. I mean, it's not particularly complex code. It is just simply not allowing these things to load. It blocks them as a page.
I think Ghostery is just it was just written by someone that wanted to do it.
It's open source.
Yeah, open source.
And how does open source make money when you give it all away? It's because they become consultants and get paid to give advice.
And so those are kind of the only 2 things I think to consider. There are some more extreme things in terms of browsing to consider, and there's other extreme things you can consider in system preferences. And in system preferences, which you can't quite see because it's cut it off on the side, but system preferences is down here. There you go. So if you load system preferences, there's a security and privacy option. And again, if you're concerned, you can have a look at the privacy options here and really lock it down. So this, tells me which services I've said can access my location, and these are services that I've said can access my location. What can access Twitter? What can access my calendars? So email's my mail application. That can access my calendars. What can access my contacts? So pages can, things can. And I've said no to Evernote, Chrome, Music Converter, Smart Converter. I can turn them on, but I see no reason. And I'm not a big Evernote user, and I know some people are, but I've seen no reason why, Chrome needs to see my contacts. So when it asked me, do you want Chrome to see your contacts? I said no. I can change my mind, and if you change your mind at a later date, you can untick it, but you've already got it by then.
I'm always being asked to join LinkedIn and various things like that, and that's presumably because one of my friends who's a member has allowed them to take their Facebook and contact
possibly.
else.
LinkedIn are renowned for that. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You're in my address book. But it wouldn't be me, because I would have said no. I mean, LinkedIn, I don't allow to see my contacts. So I'm only ever contactable on LinkedIn. I haven't contacted anybody through LinkedIn. I'm not trying to make excuses, I'm just saying. So there is that kind of even if you are particularly private, perhaps your friends might not be, your colleagues might not be, and so information about you will potentially get out. But that's worth playing with. If you are if you are moderately concerned and paranoid, there's Firefox. Now I don't really use Firefox, but Kane does. Firefox, maybe I should let you talk. In terms of the comparison between Safari and Firefox?
I actually use 3 browsers. For normal browsing, I use Safari pretty much in the same mode as you. Until recently, I did have a Facebook account and stuff like that, and LinkedIn, but I've closed those. And I used to use Chrome for that. And Firefox, if there's something I want to do that I want a feeling of a bit more security, I use Firefox, and my version is very well locked down with Ghostery and various other bits and pieces there. So I kind of have a browser for all occasions, really.
There are more plugins available for Firefox because it's open source than there are written for Safari. That would be
one massively extreme option, and I don't think it really applies to any of us here, is Tor. which is another basic browser that basically hides you online by bouncing you from one place to another. And that is used for example, dissidents in countries that are politically unstable and they need to blog or need to get information out, and it's critical that their location, their situation, their position remains private and locked down. And Tor is very, very, very good, but for that purpose.
It's not 100%.
But nothing
And it's
nothing
slow.
is. And but for most of us,
It's a Tor.
Um,
You can Google the Onion router.
the Onion router. So I do have it. I've downloaded it for this purpose. I'm not sure if it's going to work too well. But I mean, this is Tor. It just looks like a browser. It will take a long time to connect, and then I tell it to go to the BBC page, and it will take a very long time to connect. But I am browsing fairly anonymously online, and it will take a few minutes to do this. So if you really want to stay private online, there is this, but I think this is massively extreme, and I don't think it's something that I don't think it's something I would recommend. You can just see how long. I mean, we're going back to.
Don't try iPlayer through it.
No.
Yes.
This we're going. The reason it's taking so long is because I'm not actually just connecting to my one server into the BBC. I'm bouncing all around the world from various different server locations in order to try and mask my signal. Ever watch those kind of sci-fi things that track you? You can see the red line getting closer to where you are as it's bouncing down. This is kind of what it's doing, and it works. I just don't think it's necessary for us, but I thought I'd mention it in case someone's heard of it or someone had a question.
Or someone was a dissident and hadn't told
Or someone is a distant. Can you?
There is an interesting use of this, which is to try and get around geographic issues.
Oh yeah, so you can watch things in the States. If you ever try to watch a video in the States that basically says, "Oh, we can't watch that video in your location," yeah, you could use Tor and you get straight through because it doesn't know where you are. In essence, I think it's fair to say. But it's really slow. It's got to be a good video worth watching.
But one of the arguments that I've heard is that those who gather data will seek out Tor footprint for a browsing session, and it takes a long time for an analyst to actually go back through all the links in the chain, but it can be done.
Yeah.
It just takes a really long time to do it.
And like I say, I think it's fairly safe to assume no matter what you do, even if you're using Tor, you're never really entirely private online in terms of if someone really wants to track you down. A couple of other things perhaps to consider is these fields that pop up. This what's your phone number, what's your maiden name, your mother's maiden name, all that kind of stuff. Just a simple piece of advice is you don't need to use real stuff in those. A number of times I'm asked my phone number and I think I don't need to give you my phone number. There's no reason why you need to call me. And you leave it blank and it says, "Oh, you haven't put a phone number in. You can't go forward."
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So I pity the fool who has the phone number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 because he must get all my calls because that's what I type in. It's the right number of digits, and it's the point at which now Safari will auto-fill that for me because it thinks that's my real phone number. I just don't do that. Your mother's maiden name, put something else. And we've talked about 1Password, and we had an interesting discussion. Was it last time? I can't remember about 1Password. About I've got lots of stuff in 1Password because if a website asks me for my mother's maiden name, it's not going to be my mother's maiden name. It's going to be something I've made up, which I've then stored in 1Password. Ideally different from each place. You do not need to use your real information. Date of birth. You do not need to use your real information. Okay. And so you do not have to surrender that information. Well, most of the time. Obviously, in certain situations, you kind of have to. If you want a company to email you, you need to give them a valid email address. But at the same time, you could sign up for a Gmail address, a Google email address with an entirely fictitious name and use that as a pseudonym and as an alias, and get all your emails sent to that one particular email address. And your private email is just for friends and family. And you
can buy a domain and have as many email addresses as you like.
But again, it's balancing. It's balancing that effort versus benefit. My Gmail account is open. I think Google does quite a good job of filtering out all the spam and rubbish, and that's the one I use for most of my communications.
It even tells you when someone's trying to break into your Gmail account.
Yeah, it does, yeah. I mean, well, if someone accesses it from an unusual location or tries to access it from an unusual location. Again, that's because Google knows where you are when you access. How do you know? But anyway, it's an unusual IP or whatever.
How can we email each other? Let's say we're all suspicious and it does happen or it doesn't happen. So how can I email you and you email me back with it being, let's say, coded?
Ooh, that's very difficult. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
It's beyond today,
Beyond today.
but we could certainly do an advanced session on certificates. So when I get an email from John, I think John's the only one that does it. I get a little certificate in the corner saying this is John, which is good. When everybody else went Kane, I have no idea. I just assume it's Kane. And that's because
usually it's really contentious.
yeah.
We can't be sure now. It might be somebody else who's tracking it.
Exactly.
They're trying to find out who you are.
You can set up, and it's public key and encrypted key, and I'm afraid it's not as technical as it sounds, but it's not something we've done. Lots of messaging services are encrypted. iMessage, for example, is encrypted, and apparently end-to-end encryption as well. And Apple have reportedly said they can't see the contents of iMessage encryptions because they're between you and me. And there are other, like WhatsApp services, Telegraph is another one that do that kind of encrypted communication from one to another. We could do another session on that. The last thing I want to talk about, because we've overrun by 5 minutes, and I want to give you some chance for questions and other points. Dropbox, SugarSync, all those kind of cloud storage solutions offer huge benefits. But if you're concerned about your data being stored in servers potentially in the US and you're not a US citizen, then that's quite it doesn't seem to matter if you are or not. But as you are not a US citizen, the NSA have no obligation to follow what they would normally do in terms of privacy for a US citizen. So that data that's stored in the US arguably could be searchable. Now, do you care? Well, I don't know. It's up to you. And it's that debate we were kind of starting earlier on, which is perhaps not for today. But there are other alternatives. There are personal cloud storage alternatives where you can buy a hard disk, Drobo, do one, that's physically plugged into your machine that you can access from your laptop and access from your phone. And so it's the same as having a Dropbox account, but instead of storing the photos up online, you store them on a hard disk, which is next to your computer in the house that you're in, but you can access it from anywhere in the world, and you can access it from a laptop.
There's called a transporter as well.
Transporter, and so there's a recent article in 9 to 5 Map about Synergy. Oh, this will probably have the ghost read things, because it normally does. About Synergy's latest version, so let's just find this. And it sits, again, we can link to these. I'm sure I saw this. Ah, there we go. So Synergy is a little box. Synology even.
Yeah, I have one.
Synology.
And I have one, and I just upgraded today to version 5.
And yeah, so you store all of your information on your own cloud, effectively, and these are marketed as personal clouds, and they give you all the benefits of Dropbox. In other words, access it from your phone, your iPad, your other computers, etc. But the information isn't being stored up online. Now, why would you want this? Yeah, the privacy is perhaps one concern. Having your information. So why, if you don't mind, why do you have this? Why don't you just use Dropbox? Why don't you just use Dropbox?
Because it would be vastly expensive to have 20 terabytes of storage.
Mike is an atypical user and has lots and lots and lots of data. But for you and I, the thing is this is $100 that you to buy a hard disk and plug it in. It allows you to access your files from everywhere. You wouldn't need a huge amount.
Can you access them from elsewhere in the world without the sort of base computer switched on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a...
Yes, network attached. Yes, network attached. It's attached to your network.
Similar.
Yeah, it's attached to your network. It is a computer attached to your network.
And the computer's got to be on.
No, that computer has to be on. The disk box is a computer.
Oh,
so this little
It's a
box has to
server.
be turned
if
on.
that's on,
That's a
you'd get
computer.
straight through to
There is one thing to consider, perhaps.
Nothing else has to be on apart from your router.
Yes, is that any device within your home connected to your router, if it's going to accept incoming requests from outside, your router must allow it.
Oh yeah.
And there is unfortunate protocols called Universal Plug and Play, which isn't very secure, which just turns loads of things on that probably shouldn't be turned on. So some of these manufacturers try and make their equipment as easy to set up and configure as possible, but the downside of that is that you may be opening up lots of your network visibility where you wouldn't really want to on a home network.
You can usually see what ports, or even just port rate, the software would open from Synology. There's a similar thing for a ReadyNAS NAS drive, which is called Ready Cloud, and that enables you to connect to your own cloud storage through the servers that ReadyNAS, the makers of ReadyNAS, through their servers. So it's actually not too bad at all. And they only open a couple of ports, so you can usually see when you enable your own cloud services on a drive, you can see how it's done and how secure that would be.
But it comes back down to trust, doesn't it? Do you trust these companies to do this the right way?
The traffic goes through their servers. So, for instance, I've got a ReadyNAS. If I access my Ready Cloud on my ReadyNAS anywhere in the world, it will go through their servers. And do I trust them? It doesn't go for anybody else's service. It only goes through there.
So the business model will Ghost. You see, the little Ghost is blocking that Twitter link, is blocking that Google Plus, and I can click on it, and Ghostery will allow it to be seen. And so yeah, so the same thing with movies and comments and everything else. I'm not sure if comments are. I don't think comments are blocked in this particular one. But that kind of concludes my little bit on privacy. DuckDuckGo, worth having a play with, I think. Set it as your homepage, but it's an interesting search engine alternative to Google. The privacy options in Safari, Ghostery I think is a strong recommendation. It just makes things faster and easier, to be honest, because it's not loading thousands of interactive adverts that as I accidentally move my mouse across, it suddenly fills up the whole page and shows me an awful hideous I don't want to see. So there's advantages just from a convenience point of view as well as from a privacy point of view. And I think that's probably all I'll say about privacy. I think if you're interested, we could do a talk later about cloud. We've already done actual real cloud, Dropbox and SugarSync and the like, but we could do something more about local cloud storage if you're interested in at a later date. But we'll send around some surveys in the next few months and see again what topics you'd be interested in. We're kind of at the bottom of the list that we got to last time.